Hi guys, a very grumpy and tired Tiberius and I are going to take you through the first of these 10-minute talks. As it's race season rapidly approaching, we're just going to go through race fueling and hydration. Just a look, we've covered a bit very comprehensively in our squad sessions, but I just want to kind of bring it all together a little bit, just give you some general references. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start off with pre-race fueling. Now you've got a 48-hour carb loading window before a big race where you're wanting to consume about 10 grams per kilo of body weight of carbohydrate, that is, per day. And that's a lot of carbohydrate. So I won't give away my weight, but we're talking upwards of 700 grams of carbohydrate for someone like myself, which is a lot. And it's not something you can just do. You have to practice it before in warm up races, etc., and kind of get used to it. And that's a big aspect of fueling in general. Is your body is incredibly adaptable, but you have to practice it in advance of your goal race. Otherwise, you can get into GI distress. So spread it out over the course of those 2 days. And avoid significant amounts of fat and fiber with those carbohydrates because that is going to slow down absorption, and it's going to make you feel full quicker, basically. And if you've got all that mountain of carbohydrate to get through, you don't really want that to be impeded. So that's the 48 hours before. Those are just some general tips. In terms of the morning of the race, you want to have your main sort of meal or breakfast about 2 to 3 hours before. So it might mean getting up pretty damn early, but it's necessary. There's a few things that are more horrible than your breakfast coming back up at the start of a race, which I've experienced in a road race not a year or so ago. It was horrible. So other than that, you want your breakfast to be very carb heavy, but in terms of quantities and what you eat, keep it normal. Okay, you're going to be nervous. Your blood's going to be shifting to kind of your muscles as you kind of get the adrenaline going. So keep it very normal, keep it very simple, keep it very boring. Stay away from too much fat, too much fiber. The morning meal, that morning breakfast, is all about restocking your glycogen supplies and kind of giving you fuel. So make sure it's nice and easy to consume. So if we move on to in race, it really depends on the intensity, the goal of the event, the length of it, as to exactly what form your in-race nutrition takes. But just to kind of, one thing I really want you guys to do is to slightly separate fueling from hydration. They quite often need different approaches, so you're not going to be able to catch all with fluid carbs with a sports drink. That's not going to be optimal hydration. And how important that hydration component becomes depends on the length and intensity of the race. So I would say anything over a 2-hour road race, for example, you're wanting to shift your attention in terms of your fluids away from carbohydrate to hydration, so more electrolyte drinks. Okay. I'll cover that again in a second. But in terms of kind of an endurance event, you're looking to consume 75 to 100 grams of carbohydrate per hour. You might see some of the pros are consuming more, but let's be reasonable. And also within that range, you have to build up, in advance. You have to practice it in training, not only consuming that amount at low intensity, but also when your heart rate's a little bit higher. So tempo rides where you're practicing this fueling and nutrition with a slightly higher heart rate as well. 75 to 100 grams of carbs per hour after the first 45 minutes to an hour. How soon you start depends again on the intensity and how quickly you're going to be burning through your glycogen supplies. So as an example, it's coming up to the gravel season. The Gralic 4 to 5 hour event as opposed to Dirty Reaver, which is probably double that. The Gralic you're going to want to start consuming much earlier than you would in Dirty Reaver because it's high intensity from the start. It might level out a little bit as everything spreads out, but that first climb in particular, you're going to be flying through your glycogen supplies. So yeah, it's the scenario also impacts as to whether it's possible. You might be on a sketchy descent or what have you, but yeah, at least within the first hour you want to get on it. Okay, You can consume carbohydrate in sub 1 hour events. So, for instance, you'll see cyclocross, the guys are consuming carbohydrate, they're smashing a gel sort of maybe 40 minutes in. And that's because when a high sugar food is consumed, the receptors in your mouth tell your body to release carbohydrate because there's more carbohydrate on the way, and so you get a little shunt of energy, and that's why they do it. So you can do that. But for longer and lower intensity events, what I generally suggest, so anything over that 2 hour mark, I would, as a general rule, I suggest moving towards more semi-solid and solid foods, so your gels, your energy bars, etc., etc. Um, Regardless of what you're consuming, semi-solid or solid, always follow up with plenty of fluids. You want to dilute whatever's in your stomach. You want to help break it down. Quite often, when people get GI distress, gastrointestinal issues, it's because they've got too much food sitting in their stomach and not enough fluids helping to wash it down. And that's why I say after 2 hours, if an event is longer than 2 hours, you want to shift the focus of your fluids to more hydration focused. And rather than carb focused, because what you don't want to be doing is layering carb fluids on top of carb solids, because it's just going to overwhelm your system. The climate is obviously important as well. So even if it is a 2 hour road race, if it's super hot, I shift away from fluid carbs to more fluid hydration. In terms of hydration, pre-race, make sure you preload. So that's basically consuming a strong electrolyte drink to optimize your hydration status. So we're talking something like 1500 milligrams of sodium per liter about 90 minutes before. And all electrolytes are important, but it's sodium that is the key one, okay? Because the goal is really to kind of pump up your blood plasma levels. Blood plasma is the fluid element of your blood, and it acts like a coolant basically. I won't go into any more than that, but yeah, sodium is the most important electrolyte for hydration purposes. A lot of sports drinks, they don't contain very much sodium, even though they might talk about being hydrating. Yeah, for optimal preloading, you want somewhere up to around 1500 milligrams of sodium per liter, about 90 minutes, 45 minutes if you're pushed. And then in race, again, how you prioritize hydration depends on the length and intensity of the event. Up to 2 hours, you can kind of get away with focusing on the fuel. But beyond a 2 hour race, you really want the primary focus of your fluid intake to be for hydration. And by that, I mean, again, a relatively strong electrolyte drink. So in this instance, in race, you're talking sort of 1,000 milligrams of sodium per liter. In terms of quantity, you want at least 500 mils of fluids per hour and more if it's particularly hot. So yeah, any changes in temperature and any kind of really hot climates, you kind of want to bump that up. So basically, the purpose of all this is just to help you plan ahead. A lot of this is individual, how you can get away with stuff. Whether you're a salty sweater, for example, that can impact things, and it's always recommended to maybe consider doing a sweat test. It's only something you kind of have to do once, so it's worth the faff and potential expense. But yeah, hopefully that just kind of gives you some basic rules to follow, and hopefully you found it more interesting than Tiberius.